Okay, welcome to the forum, everybody. We're gonna jump right into topics. So we have our four finalist applicants to the Mountain View City Council vacancy. Want to introduce yourselves one at a time? Let's start with John.
So, hello, I'm John McAllister, lifetime, I wouldn't say lifetime, 65-year-old resident of Mountain View. So I don't know how much of an intro you want,
That's
but
about
I'm a
it.
small, huh?
That's it. Renee.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Renee Bryant. Wasn't born here, but I've lived in Mountain View for about 40 years.
Chris.
Chris Clark, been in Mountain View about 15 years, currently serving on the city's Environmental Planning Commission.
And Emily.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Ann Ramos, pronouns she, her. And I've been in Mountain View for about 7 years and serve on the Rental Housing Committee right now.
All right. So we're gonna start off with 2 questions each for the candidates. Kavita, do you want to ask the first one?
Sure. Emily, my question is for you, if you don't mind going first. How does building expensive new apartments help Mountain View's housing shortage?
So on a basic level, we're in a housing shortage because we don't have enough homes. So building housing of all types is helpful. There have been studies, there was a recent study that showed that building the more new market rate apartments now will be affordable in 40 years. So we need to think about addressing the affordable housing crisis now, but also making sure that we have the apartments into the future. So what we consider what we call NOAA units, naturally occurring affordable housing, those are units that were built 40 years ago. As we build the housing now for market rate, we also, I'm a big proponent of the 3 Ps, which is production, preservation, and protections to address our housing crisis. So production, and that addresses the first question, but it does need to be paired with preservation and protection. Protection, what most people know as the tenant protections that Mountain View has managed to pass.
All right.
And we are time. Thank you.
Yep. All right, April. Pick one.
Just unmuting myself. All right, I am picking John. John, the
Hello,
housing.
April.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
sorry.
hello, I see
Sorry,
Billy now.
you're responding to me. Okay, John. The housing element requires that affordable housing sites be identified in all areas of the city, including your neighborhood. Do you support adding affordable housing at the shopping center at Miramonte and Cuesta?
Yes, makes perfect sense. If we want to reduce people's commute for working, your workers are right there. I wish I had my Baskin Robbins. I wish I could put affordable housing up above it. So over at Safeway too, it's great. I mean, it's tough right now. Mountain View's in an employee shortage, and we have people coming from Santa Clara, San Jose, just to work in our stores. And so, that's why we're having a shortage, because people don't want to commute. They want to stay closer to their home. So absolutely. And also to cross the street. Now, here's what we really could get fun is, what's the guy who owns the trailer park? He owns that parking, where the Smart and Final is in Walgreens. So what's the guy? Come on, you guys all know. He owns,
John Vidovich.
Vidovich owns the shopping center across the street. So don't leave out anybody. That makes sense too. So yes, support it.
Thank you.
And with time to spare, all right, Bruce, go for it.
Okay, I'll ask a question to Ronit. Mountain View voters passed the CSFRA rent control ordinance, limiting rent increases to CPI with a max of 5% and instituting just cause for eviction requirements. Do you support the CSFRA, and is there anything you would change about it?
Oh, I absolutely support it. it makes it possible for people to continue living in Mountain View and not be priced out. There's not enough affordable housing in town, and we need to use many more tools. So absolutely, I support it. And I think there's a lot that we still need to do in terms of making sure that our residents aren't basically priced out of town when new developments come in. I really liked what Emily said about the 3 Ps, because building is great, but we need to make sure that people aren't forced to leave town. So renter protections are very important to me, and making sure that people don't get kicked out.
All right, Robert, that's you.
All right, I guess Chris hasn't had a question yet. What recent topics, since you've been serving on the Planning Commission, have been controversial, and what position did you take when you were faced with the controversial issue?
Well, I can think of 2. I think R3, which started, gosh, back when I was on council, at least initiated, and then wove its way through the process, and now is moving forward. I think for me, R3 is. I generally support the direction that staff has taken and the way that it's evolved over time. I think we originally initiated R3 as a way to sort of mitigate the destruction of naturally affordable housing and being replaced by more expensive and less dense townhomes and those sorts of things, and having all of those projects come to us. And since they were aligned with our zoning, we didn't have a lot of leeway in how we approached those. And I think initially there was a lot of consternation about the direction that R3 was going in, and I think that has I think that's been moderated, and I think the direction it's headed in now is in a much better place. I think the other is the housing element, but I think
it's just too bad that you can't get to the next one.
Oh, okay,
Your
sorry.
time's up,
Got it.
and we got to go back to the beginning. B.
I'm unprepared with the question, so I'm going to have to pass.
All right. Bruce, you want to take another one?
Sure. Emily, what recent rental housing committee topics have not had consensus, and what was your position?
What was good about the more recent years in the rental housing committee is that we gained a lot more consensus than in our earlier years. Most recently, probably the most recent non-consensus item that we had was dealing with concessions, not consensus. It's very close in language. We had this issue, especially with the pandemic, that and large vacancies from apartment units, because people were actually moving out during the pandemic. So there were high vacancy rates. And then landlords, what they were doing was they were saying your rent would be this much, but really it's this much, but we're giving you this discount. And it was a way that you can flout the CSFRA. And so we tried really hard to make sure that that you couldn't just put a fake rental rate and then have a real rental rate and then have that surpass the CSFRA. And so that was one of the items that we worked on more recently.
All right, April, you got another one for John?
I'll take it from anybody. I don't.
Well, I can add some. I can add now that I've looked up the document that I wrote. I can take one.
Go for it.
B, then I'll go next.
Yes. Are you going next, April? Sorry.
Go for it, B. It's all you. I'll go after you.
Yeah. To ask Chris, should rent increases be tied to inflation?
I think that's one of the things that we've seen with the CFRA, to the earlier question of what we might modify. I would have preferred I think we should have set it at something that doesn't float quite as wildly as inflation. I would have set it at a flat increase, or basically had a ceiling in one way or form, one way, shape, or form. Because what we've seen right now is, as you know, as the economy swings, inflation is currently really, really high, and that creates an issue with the rent increases, in the sense that we didn't use a flat percentage, or we didn't set a cap at a point that would account for what we're dealing with today.
All right. Vita?
I have a follow-on question for Ronit.
Mhm.
Ronit, when is it appropriate to remove existing trees from a development site?
Oh, thank you, Kavita.
Softball.
So when I was on council, I tried to convince council to have a policy that when a development came to us, we would require them to basically look at the trees on the site and figure out a way to have the development built around the trees, which can be done. We have an office building downtown where they basically built a very splendid office building around an oak tree. We need to build in to the way we do building, to the way we do planning, protections for our environment and for our trees. And if it's clear that that's what the city of Mountain View expects, developers are going to work a lot harder trying to do that. For example, in many cases, we get a development that has 2-3 stories
Well,
underground
We can
parking.
hear about those cases later, because
Right.
that's the end of time.
Okay.
April?
All right, John. I was wondering if you could talk about what role you think active transportation could play in building out affordable housing, something near and dear to my heart.
Oh, thank you for that. Transportation has been a big part of my campaign. I mean, my time on council, because I think it's a very important role. Transportation allows people to be mobile. And if we're talking regional, we have a system that's efficient and affordable. People can live wherever they want. That's affordable, that meets their needs, and get to work on time. That's why I was really excited about the high-speed rail, because you got people in Los Banos where you could buy a house for $200,000 at the time, and you can get people to their job site quickly. Another thing about transportation, it reduces greenhouse gases. It improves quality of life because it reduces traffic. So by allowing people to be able to live where they want to live and get to their job quickly and efficiently, that's why mobility I think will help affordable housing. Also, when you're building next to a unit, affordable housing next to a viable transit, you can have reduced costs because you're not putting in parking. Therefore, you can lower the cost of the construction, and therefore, hopefully they pass that on to the renters and people live there. And so either if it's a condo or whatever, those reduced costs should be passed on.
We can only hope. All right. Well, that's it for this section. We got
a 10-minute break.
Do you need a 10-minute break, John?
No, I'm just kidding.
Do you need a bio break?
Yeah.
All right. It's okay. If you need a break, feel free to ask.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. All right. So in this section, we're gonna have a little fun. Hope you're ready. All right. So we're gonna go round robin again. Let me see what the order is. I haven't pulled up. All right. It's going to be John, Ronit, Chris, Emily.
You just finished with me.
Uh-huh.
You want to start with me?
That's how random works.
Okay. I'll take just tip my toe in transit for 100.
All right. And you're going to have 90 seconds for each of these. And the score does not reflect, you'll figure it out. By the way, if anyone in the audience wants to volunteer to ask the questions out loud, feel free to note it in the chat, raise your hand.
Okay, what should the city do? Well, the city is doing a fantastic amount of work right now.
Read it out loud first.
Oh, I have to read it. Why do you think,
Or I can read it if you want.
what do you think the city of Mountain View should do to make biking, walking, and taking public transit safe and comfortable for all street users? Well, I have to applaud Mountain View. We've been working on it a long time. We have a pedestrian bike plan that we've been working on. Bruce England was a member of that committee for a long time, so he put in a lot of input. So the Mountain View is really doing a lot to make sure that. One thing I like to emphasize is that we got to make biking and walking more safe for the schools. If you see traffic in the morning, it's because parents are driving their elementary kids to a neighborhood school, and they should be able to have biking and walking that's safe to get them there. Or they should even have some public transit that we subsidize or redirect. When I was on the VTA board, I worked with the city of Los Altos to redirect a bus line to go to the high school and the middle school. And they were able to pick up those kids and drop them off where the bus route wasn't there before. And again, comfortable for all street users, absolutely. The only way you're going to get people to get biking, to walking, is that they feel safe out there. There's plenty of lights, and there's cross lights. Bruce and I know about putting in lights on El Monte to make sure that was very safe. And I think the city needs to look at some of its lighting and cut back some of the trees a little bit to make those streets a little bit safer. So along with our, we usually update our pedestrian bike plan all the time. We're doing stuff on El Camino, putting in bike lanes. We're constantly reviewing of where, with the developments, what should be there. Well, I'm very happy and proud of what Mountain View is doing. And a shout out to Cherie for getting me on a bike and looking at it when I was mayor to see all this, what can be done. And it's been very helpful ever since.
And then finally, can you guess which group submitted this?
I don't know, maybe the mobility group, Bruce England about it. Because that was big with him.
Mountain View Streets for All.
Yeah. Well, that was part of it. Okay.
All right. Ronit, you're up.
Okay. I don't know, livability for 200?
All right. I got someone raising their hand. Do you want to read the question?
Do the candidates believe the jobs, housing?
Oh,
and
no, that's Stephen, but let's see. Maybe.
Somebody else reading it, or shall I do it?
If he's going to do it. Yeah, no.
Do the candidates believe the jobs, housing imbalance is a problem? And if it is, what's the best way to overcome it? It is a problem because the number of jobs versus the number of housing units we have is a data point that the state uses in determining how many housing units we need to come up with. Or the state lets the regional agencies determine it, and that's how the regional agencies determine it. So the RENA number is based on how many jobs versus how much housing we have. So we need to address it. It's now a state requirement. It's not a decision that we make whether we do it or not. The best way to overcome it is, we obviously need more housing. We may consider that we have enough offices in town. And the idea of looking at a moratorium on building offices seems very acceptable to me. And maybe changing some office buildings to housing, I think that's a really exciting possibility that I would very much hope we would investigate.
All right. And which group do you think submitted this?
Well, there are some Mountain View, Sustainable Mountain View Planning. I don't remember the name of Balanced Mountain View. I think the group that Bruce and Aaron lead is one of them also.
He does have a few in here. Let's see if we get to him. All right, Chris.
Housing for 300. Has rent control been a good policy for Mountain View? I think it's been a mixed bag. I think overall, I'd say not just 50-50. I think on the whole, it's actually been it's done better than I thought it would. I think it's helped keep people here, especially during the pandemic. And I know the state set some rules there that applied beyond Mountain View, but I think overall it's actually been a good thing, especially during the last few years. I think there are some things that, if we could go back and change it, we might look at the inflation factor, like I mentioned earlier, and a few other provisions. But it's in the charter. It's the law, and I think we should continue to implement it and do what we can to make it succeed.
All right. And which group do you think submitted it?
Balanced Mountain View, Housing Justice. Got it. Is there a list of all the folks who are participating, but all the groups? I saw an initial list, but we can get to that later.
It's in the email, and yeah.
Okay.
It's somewhere. All right, Emily.
All right. It seems like everyone's progressively getting more higher numbers. So I'm going to pick up 400 and let's go with wellness safety.
All right.
How do you propose avoiding hiring or retaining police officers with extremist views? In some point, this might be a larger issue in terms of, oh, did you need me to read it more clearly or?
No,
Okay, so that was good. So I think one of the things is a national database would be helpful in determining whether a police officer had use of force incidences in the past. That should be, use of force incidents should be dealt with a critical eye. Not because we assume that it was a bad judgment call, but because whenever use of force is something that you are representing your community as a police officer, and you need to carry that responsibility very mindfully, and obviously with the safety of yourself and others in the community in mind. So avoid hiring or retaining police officers with extremist views. I think also significant background checks, including but not limited to their social media, statements in the past, and really good referrals, just like you would with any job. And my guess is this is probably MVCPRA, or Mountain View Coalition for Police Accountability, for Police Reform and Accountability.
That's the one. And you're early. Love it. All right. John, what's your poison?
I'll go to transit for 300.
All right. Let's hear it.
What council of transportation projects would you prioritize? Mass transit. The shuttle around the city. When I was mayor, that was started off, and it was a very limited route. But I think we should continue to have that. Again, working with the school districts to get kids moved about. Again, it reduces, greenhouse gases. I keep repeating it because it's so important, and it reduces traffic. That's one of them. I also then work to do that to get people. I would also work with the bicycle bike ped to get those working along too. One item that doesn't come up too often is the control centers at each intersection. they're 30 years old, 20 years old. And so it's very inefficient. So when you're driving through the city, we're having excess greenhouse gases because they're not working as efficiently as they can. And so that's one project that costs like $500,000 to replace those controllers. That's something that we got to start looking at. At the same time we're doing that, we could put in, hey, this is for you, we could put our fiber lines throughout the city that will work that. But those are what's important to me right now. I think if we get those, it just makes a better life. Greenhouse, just so many pluses for it.
All right, and the group?
Mary Dado's group. Streets for All. Okay, well, a sustainable Mountain View. So I was close.
All right, Ronit, what's next?
All right, Emily set a good example, so I'll take green open space for 400. What will you do to support and advance efforts in the Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan, Biodiversity Strategy, and Urban Forest Plan, and Active Transportation Plan? Give my heart and soul to it. I'm a Parks and Rec commissioner at this point, and it's critical that we work on these plans. It's critical to use the community because we have so many involved and very, very knowledgeable residents to give feedback. And I have talked about that a lot on the PRC. Biodiversity strategy is coming to the PRC, in fact, in February. My hope is to have the biodiversity strategy, not just for shoreline, for North Bay Shore, but to have it for all town, for all of Mountain View. The urban forest plan is extremely near and dear to me. I want to make sure that we have the best plan, be a model for all the other towns. It's extremely important to me that we emphasize native plants because that's how we support biodiversity. We live in California, not in England, not in China, not in New Zealand, not in South Africa, and all the other countries where we have plans from. Active transportation plan, it's all part and parcel of connecting our green spaces, of making it possible for us to move.
And what group do you think it's from?
Green Spaces Mountain View. There we go.
Good call. All right, Chris.
Let's try transit for 400.
All right, transit 400.
Long-term vision for transportation Mountain View. That has evolved over time, but I think a walkable, bikeable city. I was on the initial Grand Boulevard advisory body that, and I think I would love to see El Camino Real transformed into a much more bike and pedestrian friendly from a state highway to something much more bicyclist and pedestrian friendly. I think we're moving in that direction, obviously, with what Caltrans is going to do, hopefully starting this year. California Street, that corridor, I would love to see transformed. We've talked about it for years, and I know that we're making some inroads there, but I wish that could happen faster. The grade separations, allowing folks, especially at Castro Street, to safely pass on bikes and on foot under Central Expressway, and more broadly, getting Caltrain electrification and high-speed rail in to really take advantage of the nexus that we have in Mountain View of where light rail meets Caltrain, the freeways converge, and really revitalizing our downtown there. And then I think the other key question is getting transportation from downtown out to North Bay Shore. And I know the reversible bus lanes project is a big part of that, but I'd love to start someday thinking a little bit bigger, as we have in the past, of whether it's some sort of rail or pod cars, whatever the right technology is. I would love to really have us at the forefront there once the dollars and the impetus is, or
Who do you think is
the
curious about
will
the
is there.
long-term vision for transportation Mountain View?
Sorry. Oh, who asked? Coalition for Sustainable Planning, maybe. Streets for All, of course.
All right, Emily.
All right, let's go into livability for 400. What strategies could the council take
An
to
easy
prevent?
one.
Huh?
An easy one.
Yeah. What strategies could the council take to prevent the repeated power outages residents have faced from PG&E? Now, my understanding is the reasoning PG&E has a lot of issues is pulling certain permits to deal with some of the underground lines that they have had. So when we have a lot of these issues with access and easement, one, we should plan for the future to make sure that we don't have that kind of limitation with new developments. And then for particularly the communities that are hard hit of this, I remember reading in the Voice article that it was a particular neighborhood that faced long periods of power outages. There should be some prioritization on making sure the permits needed for PG&E to get and go in and fix the issue is prioritized. If the issue still exists even after we cut that red tape for PG&E, I think there should be a lot of advocacy to the Public Utilities Commission that regulate PG&E to ensure that they actually do address the needs of our residents and that they are getting the service that they need. A long-term goal could be having our own utility compared to Palo Alto, but I feel that's really long away from now. So that but keeping our options open. Now, who do I think asked this question? Maybe Livable Mountain View? Really? DSA, okay.
Okay, I'm going to take over from Alex to tee people up. Thanks, Emily. John, you are up again. I do want to say that just because something looks like it has more points does not necessarily make the question harder. So, just because you choose 500 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a hard question, or avoiding the hundreds gives you an easier question.
Okay. Well, how about if I, wellness and safety for 200? What is or not? Oh, that's a good one. The premise is the police are there to protect and enforce the laws. But in our case, we want them to do more than just enforce the laws. We want them to be watchdogs, not watchdogs, but be there for people when they're in distress, when they need help, to give a sense of well-being, that it improves the quality of life because they're community oriented, to help people, to work with the schools to make sure that they're safe and that the children and the parents feel comfortable taking their kids to these places. There's just not one. They're there to, hopefully with the proper training, when there's a mental issue, that they are there. And I wish they weren't there, but they're the ones that society has sent to take care of the initial response. And that's and it's just sort of to make sure that everybody, again, just feels comfortable in where they are, that they're valued, that they go to the people, make sure they're valued, because they're there to protect preserve and make the people feel comfortable in their area. So that's sort of that's what I think that they need to do.
Great. Thanks, John. Who do you think asked this question? Any thoughts?
Yeah, the committee for police reform and that committee. Coalition for Accountability.
Yeah, great. Good job. All right, Ronit, you are up next. Where are you going to head on the board?
Well, since you made it pretty obvious that it's somewhat random in terms of difficulty, I have no idea. Why don't I go for wellness and safety? 300. What is the role of the Public Safety Advisory Board? So I think we want, I think we have a wonderful police force. When I was on council and I went to swearing-ins of officers, I was always really impressed by the level of education, the diversity of backgrounds of our officers. It made me feel so good about the people who were supposed to, you know, whose role it is to protect us and to enforce the laws. On the other hand, though, the police force is asked to do so many things that maybe social workers could do better. I think we need a public safety advisory board so the community voice is heard in how the police, in communicating with the police. I have found when I talk to officers and when community members came to me to talk about the PD, that the PD really listened, was really open to listening to the immigrant community, to people who had concerns. It's good to have something formalized where communication can happen.
Thanks, Ronit. Who do you think asked this question?
Possibly the same group that John answered the question. No, Phil.
No.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil. Chris, over to you. Where are you going to head?
Let's look at a column that hasn't had much activity. I was housing 2 for 200. I do support the, sorry, I should read it. Do you support the safe parking program and how would you change it? I do support the safe parking program. I'm glad that we've been able to expand it over the years and the partnership with the county has been key on that. I think it's especially been key when paired with the restrictions that have been put in place. I think if we had put restrictions in place without expanding safe parking and committing to that over a multi-year period like we did, that it would have I think it would have had we would have had a much worse outcome than we had for not just the city but for those folks who were living in vehicles. So overall I support it. I hope that we can continue it and find ways to expand it moving forward. Especially in partnership with other agencies as well, because as has been said many times before, it's this is a problem that and an unfortunate problem that exists not just in Mountain View but in surrounding cities as well. And the more that we can work together on these things, the better we'll be able to provide options to folks that we wouldn't necessarily be able to provide in our own capacity.
Thanks, Chris. And you know what comes next?
Oh, the Housing Justice Coalition. I got the name right. Mountain View. Yeah, Housing Justice.
Nice job. Emily.
All right. Following former Mayor Clark's example, let's go with one that hasn't been selected, which is the potpourri And let's live dangerously. Let's go with 500. How would you decide on appointments to the various city boards / commissions? Is it appropriate to appoint activists? So there are two questions here. How would I decide on appointments to various city boards / commissions? I think they have to care about the subject matter. They have to demonstrate to the best in terms of our applicant pool, to the best that that we can possibly get, engagement with that board or commission. So there's a reason why we ask people in the in those applications, how many of those boards commission meetings have they gone to? So I do believe that it's important that they care and that they have engaged. And so when you continue that on with, is it appropriate to appoint activists? Who else is going to be caring as much and engaged? You do have, and I use activists as a very broad term, but I don't believe that is a negative to do that. So if they can show that they are engaged and that they care, I think they are appropriate appointments to the city boards and commissions. So now, who asked this question? Mountain View Housing Justice? Mobile Home Alliance. Okay.
Kavita.
Oh, I thought April was going.
Well, yeah, but you have to like throw to her.
Oh, I'm
Catch.
sorry. Here, April, catch.
You see me? I've got it. All right, wonderful. Before I start out another round with John, I just want to remind the audience that we'd love for you to submit questions to the Q&A. All right, John, you're up for round 3.
Potpourri for 300. Given the amount of items in the council work plan, how would you ensure your priorities are addressed in the next 2 years? I would, so this is sort of an unfair question for the rest of the council because they've been working on things. And so you want to continue momentum for what they've done. You haven't been part of their discussions on a lot of this stuff, so it's tough to come in. But I would ensure that my priorities for the next 2 years, if I get appointed, are ones that are realistic to get done, things that can be done that are a priority over others. But one would need to say to put it in a category so that people could support it. You would have to look at something that does not have too much time involved, staff time. And you have to be realistic on what you pick. So it's always been years that councils, their work plan continues to grow. And so I would be very specific and keep my priorities to a simple number.
All right, and who do you think posed this question?
City staff.
Great. Okay. On to Ronit. What is your next choice?
I don't know. Why don't we say open space for 300? What percentage of public park or green space per person do you think is ideal for a city like Mountain View? Well, you know, Mountain View is built out. We have asked on the PRC and on council and as residents any number of times, there has to be more land somewhere. There have to be open, lots that are not being used. And you know what? We're built out. So for me, it's not a question of the percentage. It's a question of looking at the map of the city and making sure that every neighborhood has some open space where that can be safely accessed, where people can meet, where people can, in a pandemic, sit outside and be safe and talk to their neighbors, where the children can play, where community relations can be built. So it's not about the number, it's having that space available, having a green space available for people. And you know, there are, these days, there are mapping tools where you can just do an analysis, look at the map of the city, see where are the neighborhoods where there's least space, where there's most people, where there's most children, and make sure that we work for every such neighborhood to have a safe green space to build the community in.
Thank you. And who do you think posed this question?
Well, Green Spaces Mountain View would be my guess.
Not a bad guess. Thank you. And Chris, pick your poison.
Potpourri for 200. The appointment process was chosen over a special election due to historically low turnout in such elections, especially in historically marginalized groups that comprise the working class. As a council member, how would you represent the concerns of working class mountain viewers who may not be able to participate in public meetings to the same degree as those who have access to more resources? So I think this is one of the key dilemmas that you face is as an advisory body member, as a council member, which is what voices aren't in the room, or who aren't you hearing? And I think one of the things that we actually had, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was that we were able to find ways to increase participation in meetings through thankfully now hybrid meetings. But I realize not everyone has access to those resources either. So I think the steps that we've been taking to make sure that materials are translated, that we're going out and having conversations with the community about key issues in their neighborhoods with translation is really important. And I think recognizing, frankly, that no matter what your lived experiences are, and no matter how hard you might try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, it's really hard. It's important that you recognize that you can't necessarily understand that person's lived experience, and to be as empathetic as you can, and to try to understand as best that you can where they're coming from, and understand you know, what they're going through and what their perspective is. And I think approaching each topic with as open a mind as you can, and as much empathy as you can is really important, and not just necessarily listening to the loudest people who happen to be in the room at the time, who have the means to be there, and who might be, you know, represent one side or the other.
Wonderful, thank you. And again, who do you think posed this question?
I will guess the Housing Justice Coalition again. DSA, nice.
All right, Emily, you're up.
All right, let's go with green open space for 200. Okay, what experiences have shaped your relationship with the outdoors? How do you best describe your relationship with the outdoors on a daily basis? Oh, come on. I am not someone that is a usual participant in the outdoors, to put that lightly. But one thing that has more recently shaped it is the pandemic, where it was not safe to meet your friends unless it was someplace outdoors with a lot of space. And so that has caused me to really reevaluate how important these outdoor spaces are, especially as gathering places, especially as free gathering spaces, because one thing that I value above all is meeting with the community, meeting with family, and being with people. And that is what the outdoors gives that opportunity to. Obviously, when there's like raining, wildfires, floods, all the plagues in the Bible, apparently, that limits it. But the outdoors, especially in California, where we're so blessed with pretty much sunny weather most of the time, that has really proven to be a real good asset that we should protect and cherish. My older sister just popped a baby this past year, and that was something that we would just love to do, would just take the baby out to the stroller and just enjoy the outdoors. I think those have changed me.
Thank you. And who do you think posed this question?
I'm kind of thinking green space is Mountain View.
Yes. Wonderful. Well done. All right. My round's up. I am now throwing it to Robert.
Hi there. Okay, John, what's your poison?
Poison.
What's your choice of question?
Well, what about housing for 200? What do you think the role of the rental housing committee is? To implement the initiative that the community passed, to make sure it's fairly ministered, that there's plenty of public input, that they are fair as possible to all sides, and that they have data to help drive their decisions. So that's my answer.
All right. Who do you think posed the question?
That committee, Mountain View Housing Justice.
You got it. All right. Let's move on to Ronit. Ronit, what question would you like?
Why don't I go for transit for 200? What else can be done to improve public transit in Mountain View? So happily in Mountain View, we have the shuttles, which we worked hard to make happen, and which I have used a number of times. Much of the public transit is really not under the city's control. So we can advocate at VTA and be more or less successful. Mountain View is a really small town, and as far as geographically in terms of area, and we're pretty flat. So I would encourage us all to be involved as much as possible in active transportation. I don't ride bicycles, but I do walk everywhere. And a lot, what we can do is make the streets where buses are more welcoming for people. If El Camino had more trees, if the intersections of El Camino felt safer, more people might be interested in taking transit. Standing on a street where there's no shade and where cars go very quickly doesn't make taking a bus all that attractive.
Okay, well, time's up. Thank you, Renee. Who do you think was the author of the question?
There is a Safe Streets, maybe them.
Balance? No.
My other option, which I didn't mention.
All right, Mr. Chris Clark, choose a question.
How about livability for 300? Thoughts on municipal broadband? Good question. I have mixed feelings about municipal broadband. I think it varies from municipality to municipality and the infrastructure that's in place already, and what can be put in place cost effectively and what can't. So I think Palo Alto was very smart in getting a head start back in the early 2000s, and they have a ring and everything that they can rely on to build out something that can easily compete with the Comcast, the AT&Ts of the world. I think we're probably in a different position. I think we can do things like we've done with expanding free Wi-Fi downtown and easily tapping into a lot of those existing networks. I think where we struggle and where I do think we should place pressure on the incumbent providers and maybe even look at providing our own are in some of the underserved areas. And I think as we talked about over the years, that's especially in our mobile home communities and parks. I don't know if it's due to certain restrictions or it's just the incumbent providers not feeling like they can make enough money by serving those communities that there isn't a dense enough population that they haven't gone out there. But I think there are, I think municipal broadband is a tool that we could look at for those areas, but I think an even better tool is pressuring some of those incumbent providers through other means, and look at some of the things that they've been asking us for over the years, and maybe start making some asks in return. I know it's been a severe pain point. Okay. Mobile Home Alliance, maybe Mobile Home Alliance. No, DSA. I keep getting these wrong.
Oh, well, just as long as you get the right answers, that's the important thing. Okay, moving on to Emily Ann Ramos.
All right, let's go with housing 2 at 500. Explain the rent model for a mobile home contrasts with an apartment or a single family home. So a mobile home is you own the home most of the time. You own the home, but you rent the land it sits on. As opposed to an apartment or a single family home, where if you are renting either one of those, a landlord owns both the structure and the apartment itself. And I feel like I'm not entirely sure what else should I explain for that. What's interesting is that when you sell your mobile home, it does not, you as the owner of that mobile home sells it, but they also have to sign a lease with the park owner. And that causes some interesting dynamics. Not so much now anymore, because we do have the MRSRO, which is the Mobile Home Rent Stabilization Ordinance, that actually also has vacancy control, which was incredible that the city managed to pass that. So my guess is that this was an ask by the Mobile Home Alliance.
Right, you are. All right, that's the end of this round. I want to make a comment to remind people that it's still possible to put questions in the chat so that we can have them after we finish the Jeopardy round. And now it's time for me to turn it over. Oh, sorry, the Q&A box, not the chat. Okay, and I will turn it over to our next moderator, Mr. Bruce Aylen.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, Alex, are you controlling the continue and the reveal stuff, or am I supposed to do that?
No, I'm doing it.
Cool. Okay. John, you're up next. Which one would you like to pick?
Go Transit 500.
Yay, Transit.
What are your views on current and upcoming work on the downtown precise plan, the Moffett Boulevard precise plan, and the plans for the grade separations undercrossing, the transit center, and the Castro Street pedestrian mall? My views are they're all great, they're all needed, and they're all long overdue. So that's they're all integrated. So we are having a little trouble with our economy for some of our small businesses, and everything that we've talked about, the Moffett Boulevard precise plan, will have an economic component to it that will help add livelihood to it, because when railroad comes across and the rail came across and cut us off a little bit, that hurt them. So the grade crossing for that particular intersection will improve connectivity with the neighborhoods. People can get back and forth. Again, it's improves the quality of life. It's going to economic viability for people coming around, and it's just going to be much safer. The transit center, we're all talking about housing, and here's an excellent opportunity for us to put that affordable housing at that particular center, and that was talked about. So that was very important. The downtown precise plan, the Castro Street pedestrian mall are all very important because they will add vitality to an area right now that's lacking retail business, which is sort of hurting the area and turning it into just a food mall, some people say. And so we need to get that so that it's a vibrant neighborhood, so that there is continuity of businesses, that people want to go down there. And
I
we
have to
don't
stop
want
you there, John. Sorry. You're out of time.
Okay, well, that was for Peter. No.
Okay. And what's your guess of who asked the question?
Chamber.
Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, John. Ronit, you're next.
All right. Okay, I'll take livability for 100. What council projects will you prioritize to implement the council goals of livability and quality of life for Mountain View residents? So for me, the issues of livability and quality of life really cover all the council projects. What should I be appointed? My emphasis will be that every project that the city undertakes needs to further sustainability, improve livability, improve the quality of life. So if people don't have enough housing, that doesn't do anything for quality of life. If people are pushed out of their homes and are displaced, that doesn't do anything for quality of life. If we don't protect our heritage trees, that doesn't do anything for quality of life. If we don't have safe streets, if we don't have slow streets, if we don't have good bike routes, that doesn't do anything for quality of life either. So in my opinion, we can't focus on one issue and say, we'll deal with this issue and everything else will take care of itself later on. We need, in everything we do, to look a kind of three-dimensional, 360-degree look at what we do and make sure that we have, okay.
Sorry, Nate, got to stop you there.
Yes, very good.
And who do you think asked the question?
Sustainable planning?
Livable Mountain View. Okay, Chris, you're next.
Green and open space for 100. If you could pick a city whose park or open space concepts you admire and you would like to see in Mountain View, which would it be and why? What prevents Mountain View from achieving the same? That's a great question. It all comes down to a function of space and land. But I had the opportunity to live in Berlin for the better part of a year, and their open space concepts, and getting to and from those open spaces was the first time that I experienced anything like that, and it was mind blowing, and I really enjoyed that, even in winter, in dead of winter, just being able to get out and be able to walk to an open space in what was a very urban area. I think what prevents Mountain View from achieving some of the same things is frankly a lot of the land use decisions that we've made in the past, and I know it's hard to it's hard to go back and second guess those decisions. But in hindsight, they've cost us, and I wish we could go back and make changes. But that's not to say that we can't make changes going forward. And I think as the city redevelops, we have an opportunity, as Ronit said earlier, to ensure that we have some open spaces in each neighborhood in the city that are within walking distance. And I think what we're doing in North Bay Shore allows us to at least have a destination, Cuesta Park as well. And I think there are
Have to
other
stop you there,
opportunities,
Chris.
frankly, for destination parks. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And last but not least, Emily. Oh, sorry, you have to answer who asked this question.
Green spaces. Yeah.
There you go. Thanks. Okay, Emily.
All right, let's go with livability at 500. What is your long-term 10 plus years vision for downtown Mountain View? Our Mountain View is extraordinary. It is vibrant, and I agree with council's decision to close Castro Street. So that'd be a pedestrian walkway, very similar to 3rd Street Promenade in what is that place called? Santa Monica. I imagine that in downtown Mountain View, we can keep some of our historic architecture that's in that immediate closer to Caltrain area. I'm on the historical association, so we do a lot of walking tours in that area. But we can keep a lot of the facades while still developing our parking lots, our and the spaces that we have available there. I hope that we could bring retail back at some point. There is some retail, but not necessarily a lot. Most of the downtown is very restaurant oriented, but also connecting from that side of Central Expressway with the transit center, so that we have more people being able to essentially safely walk downtown without like crossing that eight lanes of traffic to get to there. So it'd be a hub for our entire city to work, play, live, and really the leading into a future of transit, having a connection between the past and the future. So that is my long-term vision for downtown Mountain View. I would guess that this is from Livable Mountain View.
Okay.
Oh, YIMBY.
YIMBY, yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this back to Alex.
It looks like Robert like to take the next round. Go for it.
All right, let's go again with John McAllister. Choose a question.
Wellness and safety, 500. What hopes do you have for our incoming police chief? So are we referring to our interim police chief, Max Basel, or our new appointed one that's coming in? My hopes for him that they have a strong community background, because that's the approach that Mountain View councils have stressed to their police over the years, that we are a community-based police force, that they're out there friendly, talking, that he's able to convey those thoughts to his staff, to the patrolman on the street, that this is our policies and this is the way we do business. That we have one that is young, that will stick around for a few years, that, usually when we get around to city people that reach that level of police chief or fire chief, they have a tendency to be short term. So I would like to have somebody that will stay around for an amount of years to help implement what he wants to get done. Hopefully that it comes from within, that we've had the opportunity to nurture them, that they know our the way the city does. Now, there's always ways to learn from others, but I think those are my hopes for the incoming police chief.
Thank you, John. Who do you think put up that question?
The same group that's Police Advisory, Mountain View Safety Police Advisory Group, Coalition for Police Reform and
There you go.
Accountability. Yeah.
Right again. All right, let's move on to Ronit.
Why don't I do housing 2 for 100? How familiar are you with the housing element process and the HCD's feedback on the city's draft? Did I read that? I was reading that to myself. Was I loud enough for everyone else? Okay, so familiar enough. I've read, watched some of the meetings online, read the documents. I'm very curious to hear the feedback on the draft that the city received back, and it'll be very interesting to see what HCD said and what the avenues are for us to have the housing element approved, because it's critical that we have the housing element approved. I don't want developers telling us what to do in Mountain View. I want Mountain View to figure out what needs to be done and then move forward in doing it. And the YIMBYs, perhaps? There we go.
All right. Chris Clark, what would you like next?
Roll the dice and go for potpourri 100. Are you familiar with Sally Lieber, former council member Sally Lieber's priorities and activities as a council member, and how are you prepared to carry forward her legacy? So I've known now Board of Equalization member Lieber for a number of years. I am familiar with the priorities. I watched a number of the meetings, and even when I didn't agree with some of her votes on certain things, I certainly respected the priorities that she brought forth, even though we might not have approached them sometimes in the same way, and sometimes we would have. I think are you prepared to carry forward the legacy? I think in many respects, yes, and in ways in which we differ, maybe in a different way. You know, I think it's really important that whoever is appointed is being appointed to not just fulfill political wishes, but to get basically be a team player with the remainder of council, recognizing that whoever this person is shouldn't necessarily bring a strong political agenda to the table one way or the other. So that's a long way of saying, you know, I can't be someone I'm not. I can't. Those are very big shoes to fill, and I think we would have agreed on many things and implemented some things the same way. But I think there are other things that I would have done differently. But I also recognize that this is an appointed position and not necessarily a. You know, I'm not standing for election, and certainly can't fill all of Sally's shoes, for better or worse.
All right, who do you think asked that question?
That's a very good question. Maybe DSA, Coalition for Sustainable Planning and Green Spaces, Mountain View.
All right, and now we're back to Emily Ann Ramos.
Thank you. Let's finish up with housing 500. What are your thoughts on reducing regulatory barriers and approval times for housing developers, especially for affordable housing? Refer to matrix study ? So the matrix study was actually a really great project that was brought forth, I believe, by the city manager. It wasn't necessarily brought forth by council themselves to look at how to reduce regulatory barriers and approval times, to work to increase the efficiency of our housing and planning departments. So one, we definitely need to staff up. We are still severely understaffed in both the planning and housing departments, and it's putting a large strain on our city in general. The next thing about reducing regulatory barriers and approval times, one of the things we need to do is create fully objective standards so that there isn't a lot of back and forth between the overworked staff and the developers. As long as we can agree on set criteria ahead of time, that is actually worth a lot to developers. The predictability, the knowing that when they turn in whatever project permit applications or project plans that they're turning in, that they have some sense of that they are turning something in that can actually be approved and submitted and built. So those are my thoughts on reducing regulatory barriers and approval times for housing developers. I think the gatekeeper process also really needs to be reformed. It really is. I feel like it drags it out more than just telling the project that, like, we're not going to do these zoning reforms for this project. So I will guess that this is Mountain View YIMBY who gave this question. Wow, Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning.
All right. Thank you all for that last Jeopardy round. I'm going to throw this back to Alex now. Who else would do Jeopardy but Alex? Anyway, but in any case, to do questions and answers from our audience.
Yep. The audience, who will never get to find out what's under these tiles. Forever it will be a mystery. What could have been asked?
Like the tiles in my bathroom.
All right. So for Q&A, we have our 4 interviewees and the hosts. We're just gonna take it at random from the Q&A box. Let's start with B. Do you want to pick a question?
Okay.
And then
Well,
just hit answer
actually,
live
I did have one in mind anyway.
from the Q&A box.
The downtown precise plan from Peter Katz.
Let's go for it.
The downtown precise plan, the economic viability strategy, and the matrix strategy are all important projects that the city is undertaking to ensure short and long-term economic vibrancy. How would you instruct staff to prioritize these activities?
All right, let's shuffle it. Chris? For all of these, be concise. We'll trust you.
Oh, sorry, it just disappeared from. Oh, it's under
It's
answer
in the.
now. Here we go. I would. I'll keep it very brief. I think in order, like the last thing that it's important that we get it done, but the downtown precise plan is sort of the last thing that you do, and you do that with the input of being informed by the economic vitality strategy and the matrix study, because the downtown precise plan is those are difficult to change, and you can tweak them over time, but it's much better if you can implement everything comprehensively. So I think in terms of the way that you prioritize these things, you get all the feedback and information that you can get from a strategy process, from a matrix study, and then you use that to put together the most comprehensive, precise plan that you can.
All right, April, want to pick one and a person?
Sure. How about Emily? The city is requiring developers to use much more native plant landscaping. But what about edible landscaping?
So All right, so I actually support the city in ensuring that we have more native plants that are part of these large developments or any developments, because putting in the past, there have been decisions of different types of trees that are more invasive and not conducive to our drought like settings of our area. So but edible landscaping, that is something new. That's not something I thought about before. Are we thinking about like fruits and stuff? Because that would be awesome. I personally love picking fruits. I wouldn't but one thing I would worry about is that some trees, for example, plum trees. I have a friend who lives in the downtown. She has a plum tree, and there's only a certain period of time where they have so many plums. She calls it Plumageddon. And that might not be conducive to what we would want in our future developments, to just have 2 weeks in a year and just plums.
All right, Kavita?
Renit, our opinion at the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation is that youth mental health is a public health crisis. What do you think that the city of Mountain View can do to better support our kids and the struggles that they're dealing with that have been especially exacerbated by the pandemic?
Well, in my dark past, I was a school psychologist. I think the city of Mountain View is already doing a lot to support our young people. The teen center that we have, and the wellness classes and adulting classes that they have, I think are absolutely wonderful. There is a need to work with the high schools. And there is a need to give the kids safe spaces in town. So open gyms, ping pong tables downtown, safe places for kids to be. We live in a society with so much stress, so much pressure, that I fully support mental health services, but I think we also need to not kind of turn this into a medical problem. This is a societal problem, and we need safe places and good activities for kids, and then we need people who can listen also. So it's not one nothing ever is one solution.
All right, John, I got one for you.
Okay.
Antioch and Richmond just passed rent control ordinances limiting increases to 75% of CPI with a 3% cap. Would you support modifying Mountain View's current rent control ordinances for apartments and mobile homes to align with such a cap?
Before I answer that, I just wanted to go back to a question that was asked about the police, what I hope to see forward in the police chief. And I just want to make clear, female or male. And I think I was using the male pronoun most of the time. So I would, anybody female who was ever qualified, regardless of male or female. Your question about that Antioch one, I'm not that familiar with their status, so I couldn't honestly answer your question. But if you're going but my gut feeling is a 3% cap. We need to look at, and Chris was talking about CPI and caps before. We always have to see what the kind of maintenance costs, the cost of keeping the building in good repair or so forth. And so to cap it at 3, and if things are inflation, there's got to be somewhere of a balance just to pick out a number. Now, if it's a consistent one, that's fair, but I'm not that familiar with it, so I couldn't give you an answer at this time.
All right, Bruce?
Yeah, so Serge had one, but he's left. So I'm going to move forward. Stephen Goldstein has a statement and then a question. So I'll take his question, which is.
Actually, Stephen Goldstein got his hand raised. We can see.
Can he speak? Can he speak on his own?
Let's find out.
Right, Stephen? Yep.
Go for it.
So yes,
what has happened is I've been having all kinds of trouble with my apartment, and lo and behold,
Actually, Stephen, first, who are you asking?
I'm asking everybody in this case because this applies to everyone equally. The landlord submitted a document saying that to the court, the building is non-conforming with the land zone that it's currently residing in. And yet, at the same time, the city has been providing a
Stephen, your audio is not coming through very clearly.
Is this better?
No.
Give me a second.
All right. Well, in the meantime,
I can ask a question.
go for it.
Okay. There's a question from Peter Katz that I will say. A lot of the conversation has rightly focused on the need for more housing. However, increased housing leads to increased attendance levels at local schools that are already near capacity. How do you plan to address this? When I direct the question towards Chris.
Sure. I think the way that we do this is in partnerships with the school districts. So we, when we're doing comprehensive planning for additional housing, we look at based on real world data, what we think the number of additional students that housing will produce. The school district does their own studies, and I think it's just important that we have a meeting of the minds and we talk early and often about capacity and how that's all going to play out. We tried to do that in North Bay Shore and be proactive about finding land that would be required in order to support the level of housing that we're planning to zone for. I think we've tried to do that in Wisman as well, and then in partnership with the Los Altos School District at San Antonio Center. So I know there are some of it is a matter of whose data you believe, and both sides have incentives, I think, to look at the data in different ways and quantify things in different ways. But I think at a fundamental level, it's really about working together in partnership with the boards and the staff of those districts, and just being very clear about what we're planning for, and being able to update those over time too, because the number of students produced by those developments actually changes over time as the housing ages and different demographics move in and out of them, and it depends whether it's ownership or rental and all those different things.
All right, we are almost out of time, but we had a question that came up from a few different people actually. This is for everyone, one at a time. If you were on city council and you could vote to appoint the seat to someone other than yourself, who would you choose? Let's start with Ronit.
I'm not actually going to be answering this question. I think
All right.
no, let me, that was just the intro. I think you have heard from 4 people who are very knowledgeable about the city. Obviously knowledgeable, bright, experienced, with very good answers on some issues I would have answered differently. All of us capable people and knowledgeable, and it's for council to decide.
All right, John.
When I was sitting on council, Ronit was next to me, and I learned to sit there and be quiet and let her speak, because she has more wisdom than I do, and I agree with her.
Okay. Emily.
I think I'm really glad we had this forum. So thank you to all the partners who have done this. I actually think I would select Ronit.
And Chris.
I'm not going to do hypotheticals, but nice try.
Okay. All right. Well, we are at time. Thank you everybody for joining. Thanks for attending.
Can we do the one softball question to John, please?
Oh,
John,
do it.
John, if you were to choose an ice cream flavor to describe Mountain View, what would it be?
Something that is sweet and simple, strawberry cheesecake.
I'm glad you didn't pick Rocky Road.
No, no. Thank you for asking.
Oh, there are potholes on El Camino, but that's a state's problem.
Huge, huge.
Thanks, everyone. This was great. Great format, Alex. I love the creativity you put into this.
Well done, Alex.
I had fun. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Good
Thank
luck,
you.